Good job, Bart! And we're live! Hey everyone, this is Doc Foreman. You're here at SPSM. It's the Suicide Prevention Social Media Chat. I'm really excited tonight. I will tell you, when we planned this many, many months ago, little did I know that at the very same time, Donald Trump would be in the middle of a presidential debate with Hillary Clinton, and that it would be the news week that it is. So let's say you're watching this live, but what's going on in the presidential debate? There's no reason. This is social media. You can watch both. But I will say we will have some stuff sort of to say about what is said tonight. We'll be checking in on that. I'm really excited about tonight's guest, and I'm really excited about tonight's topic, which I think when we start talking about identity politics, which has been so much a part of this upcoming news cycle and how it affects people who are targeted, we're going to have some really pertinent research to discuss. But first, let me introduce you to my co-producer, Mr. Tony Wood.
Howdy, everybody. How are you tonight? If you have any questions for our guest or for our hosts, tweet me at ADWWW.
And Tony, who are you?
Who am I, for Christ's sakes? I am the COO of Quantify. I am also the co-founder of SPSM. I am Spartacus.
And the chair, the board.
Oh, yes, I'm also the chair of the American Association of Suicidology.
Oh,
Join AAS, suicidology.org. It's a good idea.
Dr. Bart Andrews.
What's going on, everybody? Dr. Bart Andrews, or on Twitter, at Bart Andrews. I am on Twitter occasionally. I don't monitor my Twitter feed like an out-of-control social media junkie. I take appropriate breaks. I breathe. I live, because I think that social media is destroying the fabric of this fine country.
Whoa.
On another note, here, thank you, Tony. We've talked about this. We'll put an end to it. I work at an amazing agency, Behavioral Health Response, a groovy, cool crisis agency in St. Louis, Missouri, and I think we have an amazing show tonight, and I cannot wait to hear more from our guest, who is phenomenal. Heads up.
And I want to, before we get to, Darcy's about ready to introduce herself, but I want to talk a little bit about the build-up to tonight's show. So I'm really excited that we have a reason for Darcy to be on the show. She's here to discuss her research. She is a PhD student and has some really cool studies to share with us that she has been doing. She presented at AAS in the poster session. It was an impressive poster session. It was my second year knowing Darcy because she also has a lovely social media presence. And what I particularly like is that in preparation for tonight's show, she created handouts, and I've just tweeted them out. She created a specific page just for tonight's appearance. She is going to be discussing some technical stuff, but she really makes her research approachable, and you can go to her website, which I'm going to let her tell you all about so that you can connect with materials for tonight. Remember to stay in touch with hashtag SPSM. Tweet us. If something really egregious happens during the debate, let us know. We usually we don't make a ton of political jokes because it doesn't serve our mission, but it has gotten so far down the path that we're no longer above that. So with that in mind, soon to be Dr. Darcy Corbitt. Oh, introduce yourself.
Hi. So I just want to thank everyone who is watching this instead of the rolling Trumpster fire that is going on over on the major networks. I promise to be as interesting as possible. I promise, I can almost guarantee that I won't be grabbing anyone's pussy. Can I say that?
You just did.
You tell them this early on the show that you're not going to do it, because most of our guests do.
The news will never get commercialized on YouTube. Anyway, go ahead. Oh.
And
they're when our elementary school children. They're out. Sorry, go ahead.
So
sorry, Darcy.
That's something that you can definitely expect from me, is I will say exactly what's on my mind. I can't promise that it won't be offensive, but if it is, I'll apologize. If anyone was offended by that, I'm sorry. You know, that's more than you'll get from Donald Trump. Anyway, back to research. So a little bit about me. I am a second-year doctoral student at North Dakota State University. It's in Fargo. It is cold here. It's about 40 degrees, but I'm loving it. Originally, I'm from Alabama. I got my undergrad at Auburn University in Auburn. And when I started my journey as a human being, I did not know that I was going to end up where I am now. I didn't know that I was going to be, I'm sorry?
North Dakota?
North Dakota, suicidologist, you know, saying inappropriate things on a live national chat. All of the above. I didn't know I was going to be living my life from the age of 21 onward as a woman. I didn't know that I was going to spend my life thinking about and talking about suicide. At the age of 19, after having been outed at a private Christian university and after being rejected by the person that I loved, who I came out for, I attempted suicide. I felt like there was no hope in the world. I felt like my soul was gone. And I did what so many people do and what so many people turn to in a time when they feel like they can't hold on anymore. And I survived, and I'm very thankful for that. But it really changed my life. And I, at the time, was getting a degree in English literature. And I was researching gender representations in 18th century literature, and I was looking at how those representations in literature affected how the culture viewed women, how the culture treated women, their thoughts about women, etc. And you know, that's what I was doing, and I was like determined that my life was going to be about that. And I was reading the news, as I do every morning when I wake up, and I met this person. Can you see? Sorry. His name is Josh Pacheco, or was Josh Pacheco. He's from Michigan. He was a gay teenager in high school, and he was bullied for months and months after he came out and because of his sexuality. And he told his friends, he told his parents, he told his teachers what was going on, and no one did anything to stop it. And in December of 2012, I think, he died by suicide in his garage. And to quote Thomas Joyner, erroneously thinking that his life would be better off, or the people in his life would be better off without him. And that had a profound effect on me. So much so that he's on my desk. I have a picture of him on my desk at work. And I decided then and there that rather than devoting my life to the study of literature, which is something I really loved, I was going to devote my life to the prevention of suicide. Because I understand firsthand what it feels like to be in that place. And I understand what it's like to be an LGBT person and be marginalized and rejected by everyone you care about, not feel safe at school, not feel like you can have a future. And I knew that I was strong enough to fight for people who weren't, or to fight for people who really didn't think that they were strong enough. And it hasn't been easy. I mean, I get death threats because of the work that I do. And, you know, people have said really awful things. Someone just said something about me on Twitter. I want to see what it is now because I think it may have been not very nice. But for me, the work that I do has a very measurable outcome. And that is whether or not people live or die. Whether or not people have the ability to live a life that embraces who they are. And I've stood on the void of life and death, of having the world in front of me and having an abyss in front of me. And I get what that feels like. And so even on the days when I don't particularly want to do therapy, I don't particularly want to be doing research, I don't particularly want to be eating ramen and like barely scraping by because graduate students. I know that the work that I do really can make a difference between people living and dying. And so that's why I do what I do. So that's my introduction. Hopefully I redeem myself a little bit.
Darcy, that was a stellar introduction. Thank you for your sense of mission. So tell us a little bit, when we were doing the sort of the warm-up, the pre-show, you talked about that you knew you could do research. And so you said, I'm going to become a suicidologist and I'm going to do research. Instead of researching literature, I'm going to start researching suicide. And you started researching bullying. And what did you start to see, or what did you start to find? How did this lead into a research project?
So I was working in a lab at Auburn. I was working with Tracy Whitty at Auburn, and she researches suicide behaviors and psychopathology. And I asked her, after I was working with her for a while, I asked her if I could do a project. And she said, yeah, definitely. And so she said, just do some literature searches and see what you want to do. And very quickly I saw that despite the fact that we have pretty good funding, it's not great, but it's not non-existent. We have good funding for suicide prevention, despite the fact that we have excellent empirically supported suicide prevention programs out there. The rates of suicide aren't going down, they're going up. And what that told me as a very young researcher, and later was confirmed for me by a very old researcher, is that while we have great programs, they're not accessible to the people who need them. And if you think about the characteristics of people who experience suicide ideation, they all, they feel isolated, they feel hopeless, they feel like a burden. So it makes sense that they're not accessing these services that they need. We also know that college students, despite the fact that they probably have more access than most people to mental health resources, tend to not use them. So what that told me is that, okay, we have great things, but the great things are not accessible. So how can we make them more accessible? Do we do public information campaigns? Do we, I don't know, like, what do we do? And I was on Facebook because I basically live on Facebook. I love it. It's like an online dumpster fire. It's like you can literally watch people crash and burn. It's very amusing. You can also get connected to really great things. And what I saw was that in the Middle East, this was during what was it called? It was that spring when all these countries had these major protests and a bunch of terrible dictators fell. Something Spring, can't remember what it's called. But anyway.
Arab Spring, right?
Oh, was it the Arab Spring? I don't remember. It's been a long,
we should never test my memory, especially about words, but I say we go with it.
Okay, so I was watching the story unfold and how people were able to use social media to really get this campaign going, to get people engaged, to get people moving, to get people protesting. And I thought, there you go. That's the answer. Social media. People are using it. People are on it. It's powerful. It's a way that we can use this in some way for suicide prevention. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just go with what we have. And so I went and looked in the literature, and guess what? There wasn't very much of it. And it's
shit!
It's like, oh, so it's like, okay, on the one hand, it's great. It's like, found my niche. Most people don't find their niche until like they get their dissertation done. I've already figured out what mine is. But on the other hand, it's like, I literally am walking blind here. I don't know what I'm doing because no one else has tried anything. And
research advisors love it when you find something that there's no good precedence for.
Oh, they love it. I'm very fortunate that my advisor is very open to me doing very risky projects that may or may not have any good outcome. My thesis project is one of those. But what I wanted to know though is okay, so if we can use social media, or if we were to use social media in suicide prevention, what we have to know, the first thing we have to know this is viable, is whether or not people will recognize suicidality when they see it. Mm-hmm. Because Facebook has this great suicide prevention module on it, but people aren't necessarily going to use it. What we really need is peer intervention, where friends seeing friends in trouble will reach out and help them because they feel isolated. And if somebody takes that initiative to help them, it's gonna reduce the likelihood that they do something that could literally be a tragedy that was preventable. And we see this in I
want to ask you something really quick.
Mm-hmm.
How often are we seeing people being suicidal on social media? Like what do we understand anything about the frequency that occurs?
There's no empirical literature on this. So this is another one of those walking blind moments. I know, that was my reaction. That was literally my reaction when I'm, sitting here doing literature review. I'm like, all the literature is focused on whether or not on how social media hurts people psychologically, and it's like, it's not. Why are we looking at that? Why don't we look at ways we can use it for good? So, if you look though at the popular media, there is a precedence for this happening, and actually, someone has done an empirical study on the disclosure of mental health concerns on social media and found that a large percentage, I want to say it was like 94%.
Wow.
I think it was like 94%. No. 94% of college students use social media. It's about half of college students display mental health symptoms on social media. So suicide is a mental health disclosure, a mental health issue. So it's logical that such a thing would occur, maybe not a lot, but I'm not so much interested in preventing suicides in progress as much as preventing them from ever getting to that place where they're in progress. So if someone is disclosing that they're depressed, that they're stressed, they're isolated, that they're anxious on social media, my concern is that they're connected with the resource that they need to de-escalate that problem before it gets to, a serious issue. And so my question though was, if we're going to do this research, we need to know, do college students, do young adults recognize suicidality when they see it online? Because if they don't, then there's no point in continuing this line of inquiry. We need to find something else. Because I wasn't completely sold on the idea. I needed evidence that it was.
Can I tell you, I was chatting, been emailing with some researchers last couple of weeks, and that was the whole thing. They were like, well, how would you even code that? So they were like, here are folks on Reddit discussing suicidality. How can we tell the difference between someone who's stressed and overwhelmed and someone who's suicidal? And can a regular person understand that and code that? And we're trying to figure that out right now, because this is sort of, I hate to say it's like pornography. It's like sort of one of those things where people say, I know it when I see it, but operationalizing that for the purposes of research is super hard.
So I can tell you empirically that they can with pretty good accuracy.
Oh, I need to put you in touch with Dr. Philip Resnick. Anyway, keep going.
Okay, so this was my project. So I did this project as a senior in college, as an undergrad. And what I did was created what I call the simulated Facebook newsfeed. And so on Qualtrics, I've designed a newsfeed. It looks kind of like it's very low budget because I didn't have any money. But it gets the point across. It makes it as in vivo as possible, as natural as possible. And we ask participants to interact with it and then to answer some questions at the end. And we had four different conditions. So one condition had 0 suicide in it at all. The other 3 had suicide disclosures by the same person. There were 2. And those disclosures ranged in severity from low risk for suicide, moderate risk for suicide, and severe risk for suicide. So we used the Joyner clinical categories for suicide risk. And what we found was that, 1, college students were overwhelmingly able to recognize suicide when they saw it. It was a little bit lower in rate and frequency for people in the low condition, but moderate and severe, there was no significant difference between the ability for them to do that. We found that of those people, their subjective rating of the person's suicide was almost 100% accurate in terms of the condition they were in. So people in the low said low, people in the moderate said moderate, people in the severe said severe. There were no significant differences between moderate and severe, but there were for moderate, severe, and low. So that is really interesting. they had no prior exposure to these risk categories, these clinical risk categories, but they were able to identify pretty accurately what.
Dude, I've got to get a link to that. I'm serious. There are some researchers working on a similar project trying to figure out how to like help people code it to teach the machines to code it. That would be super, super helpful. I'm just letting you know, because I can't believe I didn't know that.
So that just came out in Suicide and Life-Threatening Behaviors. If you go to my website, DJ Corbitt Hall, D and a J, Corbitt, CORBITTHALL.com, /SPSM, there's a link you can download that article. And if you don't have access to that database, just send me an email and I will send it to you. So that just came out. So yay! So then we looked at some additional data from that same collection because, okay, now we know they are able to recognize it and they're able to correctly interpret the risk. What are they going to do? Are they going to do nothing? So we had asked them a series of questions.
And I don't know if you're watching the broadcast, we've had a little bit of a freeze on Darcy's feed. Tony, are you seeing it?
Yes, I am. I think that she may have bandwidth issues, so let's hope that she's able to come back.
So Darcy's going to be coming back, but use back into the debate. What outrageous things are they saying? And go look at Darcy Corbitt Hall's website. She's put really a lot of thought in that researchers would use this, that people with lived experience would use this. There she is.
Back. We got her.
She's back.
Okay.
Go ahead, Darcy.
Sorry, I think.
Frozen. Go ahead and say that last bit again.
Sorry, I think NDSU froze a little bit. Where was I? So then we wanted to see was, okay, if they can interpret correctly and if they can recognize it and interpret it correctly, then what are they going to do? And so what we found was that college students overwhelmingly were more likely to engage in what I've termed direct intervention, which is meeting them face-to-face, calling them, sending them a message, sending them a text. So actually engaging them directly. But they also were, on the other side of it, they were also equally likely to do indirect interventions, such as calling the police, seeking professional help, seeking help from another friend or from an adult. Very few, I think 3 people out of the entire 500 in the sample said that they would do nothing.
Wow.
So that's really encouraging that college students recognize suicide, interpret the risk correctly, and are willing to do all the things that we would hope that they would do to help that person.
This is some pretty sexy ass research.
It is some sexy ass research. Okay, so that was study 1. So we actually, because in the middle of this data collection,
I'm getting the vapors from just study 1. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, this is just study 1. We're going to study 2 now. So about this time, Facebook released their new suicide prevention protocol. So we were like, oh, cool, this could really be interesting research. Let's see, because we collected on the simulated newsfeed, we can collect all their clicks. So we can collect if they click like report or something. So we put the study back on Sona. We're like, we're going to collect a second time point after the announcement comes out, and we're going to see if there's a difference between these 2. So that's actually study 3 that is currently in preparation. We haven't really done any analysis on that, so that's not what we're talking about. All that to say is we collected an additional 500 people. So in study 2, we had a sample of 1,000 people. And I wanted to know, okay, we know that college students are likely to do these things. But I want to know what differentiates the people who are likely to do these things from the people who are not likely to do these things. I need to know. And so we collected a bunch of different personal factors, such as the way people use Facebook, the way that they view Facebook, their current depression, their current suicidality, their experience with suicidal behaviors. And I wanted to see, okay, do any of these things or any of these things significantly associated with a increased likelihood of engaging in some kind of intervention? And so what we found, very interesting, it was kind of like, a no duh kind of set of analyses. So what we found, I mean, it was predictable.
What's the equation for that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
what we found was that people who have had previous experience with suicide, so they've lost someone to suicide or they've had someone that they care about make an attempt, those people had an increased likelihood of engaging in some kind of positive direct or positive indirect intervention. So in other words, they were more likely to to engage with the person in a positive, respectful way, and they were likely to offer some kind of support, either directly or indirectly. And that was for people who had experienced the death of a loved one to suicide. Or, I'm sorry, the attempt of a loved one to suicide and the attempt of a close friend or family member to suicide. What we didn't find, though, was there wasn't an association, a statistically significant association with people who had lost someone to suicide. So that brings up a whole slate of questions about why that was found.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Let me make sure I got this right. I apologize. So what if you had someone you loved attempt suicide, you were likely to reach out, but if you had someone you loved die by suicide, you weren't more likely to reach out. Did I understand that right?
You did. And so that was an interesting finding, and I was really puzzled by that.
I can imagine.
But I have an explanation, a potential explanation.
Okay.
So my thinking on it is, if you have someone who's died by suicide, there's so much stigma around that. There's so much victim in terms of the person left behind, or survivor, sorry. There's so much survivor guilt when we lose someone to suicide, that I'm wondering if death by suicide, like a previous experience with death by suicide, might be associated positively with like lower self-efficacy for helping behaviors.
Yeah, that helping may not work. Like you may have to tell yourself that it was inevitable that they were going to die, that there was nothing that you could do. And you might have to really believe that in order to sort of live with it. It's really hard to live with.
Right, and so we didn't measure for that. And so that was definitely something that I'm curious about. So in study 4, which is ongoing currently, we are measuring.
Study 4! There were 0, 4. Keep going.
Yes.
Sorry.
I do not sit around. I don't play.
We have to stay warm in North Dakota.
This is in Fargo, North Dakota. So this will be interesting because North Dakotans are very different than Alabamians. So we may not have the same findings, but I'm hopeful. So we also looked at like different suicide use behaviors. So there are people out there who use suicide primarily to meet new people and to interact with them on Facebook. And then there are people out there who just kind of want to like sit on the periphery and just kind of gain information about people they already know. And they're not likely to do very much on Facebook. And so kind of intuitively speaking, we found that people who use Facebook to initiate conversation, initiate relationships, were more likely to engage in a positive direct response, but not in a positive indirect response. And then we found that people who were likely to maintain friendships. Can you
distinguish between those two kinds of responses? Can you like give a for instance for me? Because I'm not as good at research as you.
So like a positive direct would be something like, I'm here for you and I'm calling you immediately. And if you aren't answering, I'm heading straight to your place. You don't have to feel this way. I'm coming. I love you. Positive indirect would be like, suicide is never the answer. Or like if they said, and then they said to us as the researcher, I would then call and tell someone who could help Morgan with her problems.
But you might not say, I'm coming to help you now.
Right.
That would be positive and direct, which is I love you. I'm coming to help you right now.
Yeah, positive and direct would be something like instead of, I might reach out to them and say something like encouraging, but then I would call like their mom, or I would call 911, or I'd call the suicide hotline. It's like you're not engaging directly with them, but you're getting them help through somebody else.
Okay.
So what we found is that people who use Facebook primarily to initiate contact aren't likely to do the indirect. They're going to do the direct thing. And the explanation for that, at least for me, that makes sense, is that those people most likely, like those were people who are more likely to interact with strangers. And because this was a stranger, they're probably not going to take much of an investment other than maybe reaching out in a comment, reaching out in a private message. Like they're probably not going to try to like help them in any other way because they may not know where they live. They may not know a lot about them. It makes sense. If I see someone in distress on Facebook who I just know on Facebook, I'm probably not going to like go beyond just like trying to reach out in the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, so if I see somebody broken down on the side of the road, in most instances, especially if I have my kids in the car with me and I don't know who they are, I'm probably not going to pull over, but I'm probably going to call the local transportation department and let somebody know there's somebody stranded there. But if it's my friend, if it's somebody I know, I'm definitely it's a lot safer. There are a lot less sort of big question marks, unknowns, there are a lot fewer risks for me to reach out and help. So it would make sense. And from a helping standpoint, it's a lot less risky to help when you sort of know what you're going into, right?
Exactly. But that's exactly the point. Yeah, exactly. So what we did, this was interesting though, the people who use Facebook to maintain current relationships were not likely to do anything. And that gave me a puzzle for several days. I was like, what is going on? Why is this not working? Like, damn you, data. Do what I tell you to do. This is science, damn it. So there are lives at stake. Tell me all the things. And then it hit me. Okay, these people are people who use Facebook to interact with friends. They're on a fake news feed with people they don't fucking know. Oh, sorry, with people they don't know.
You might as well. We've started with pussy. Donald Trump is on TV. Donald Trump is on TV being an anus and swearing. Yes. I think you can swear for the good of humankind and suicide prevention. Okay. I say go for it.
Thank you. I've been feeling very filtered right now. So I was like, okay, they don't know this person. So they don't see this person as a friend. So their behavior is entirely predictable. They're doing exactly what we would expect to see in a normal situation. So what this tells me then, the information that this tells me is that if we want to breed, to condition an entire generation of people who can protect their friends from suicide, we need to focus on the people who are more likely to interact with people they don't know, who are more likely to be out there, kind of be go-getters. And so this transitions sort of into the other line of research that I'm doing on defending behaviors in response to bullying, is we need to figure out what causes people to have that mindset that I have to go out there and defend someone, I have to go out there and help someone, so that we can develop those characteristics in people and empower those people through knowledge and through resources to help prevent suicide, to help prevent bullying, to help prevent any sorts of...
Darcy, this is brilliant. You know that, I mean, we do know about bullying, and we know about, like, especially dynamics about girls who bully, for example. Like, you don't need everyone to stop a bullying situation. You usually need one person and then a backup. Like, we don't have to get everyone to behave the same way. We just need the person who's going to get the ball rolling and probably the second person. And there's like some momentum behind that. That's like really good social science right there.
Yeah, so that's actually what my thesis is looking at. So it doesn't actually have much to do with, it doesn't have anything to do with suicide actually. But the information we get from that I think is still generalizable, because peer-to-peer intervention I think is the same regardless of what the thing is that they're trying to intervene for. And so study 3 is looking at the report behaviors, because Facebook has this really awesome suicide prevention thing, but we don't know if people use it. And just kind of looking at the data, not having run any analyses, I don't know that people even know it exists. So that
people like, I will tell you, because I like let people know and people ask me what to do, and I'm like, so I spend a lot of time sort of reminding them that it's there. I will tell you, when I sometimes I present on it and I would show how that functionality would work, and I would put messages on my own feed and I would say, I'm about ready to post that I'm suicidal. This is for me to be able to take screenshots. Like, but not everybody would see the first post. I will tell you that I have a fabulous group of friends, and that when I would post things that sounded vaguely suicidal without even saying the word suicide, just like, I feel like life's not worth living, or I feel like things are too overwhelming to go on, or a couple of like phrases like that I warned people were sort of dummy phrases, they didn't flag me to Facebook. They immediately messaged me, and I had a lot of friends, and I'm like, oh, you missed the warning? Oh, God, I know I can depend on you to save my life. But I've been on the receiving end of people seeing those messages in my feed when it was just for display purposes. Oh my God, they did, but none of them flagged Facebook. Anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, I don't know that people really know that it exists. And because if you look at the behavioral responses, and that's if you're following along, that's in the 2015 poster. Like, the number of people who reported the content to Facebook, like almost less than 10%. And that's a 500. So 50 people out of 500, they would do it. And so it's interesting. It's very interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of this third study. So actually, there's a fourth study before the current study that's ongoing. That's actually study 5. So I get my numbers mixed up.
This is study 4B.
Well, maybe study. I don't know. Maybe it's a completely new study. So we actually so for study, just to do study 4 really fast. So for study 4, what I'm going to do is compare the behavioral actions. So all of this last study, that study 2 that we just talked about, all of this data came from the comments that they left on the newsfeed items. So I had people code that. It was awful. It was like just stressful. So I decided for my thesis I was going to do the very same thing. I like qualitative data. I like to interact with people as research participants as individuals. It's just fascinating to combine that with then what they said they would do in a self-report. It's fascinating. So for study 4, I'm comparing what they said they would do in the self-report to what they actually did to see, okay, where is there any kind of like disconnect here? So fingers crossed. Another really cool thing that has come out of study 4, I haven't really done much on it, but the preliminary stuff, is that there wasn't really any difference between the type of relationship. So if people pretty much said, you know, were consistent regardless of like whether or not they knew the person or whether or not they didn't know the person. There wasn't any significant difference in what they said they would do. So that's really good, that human beings really aren't terrible, that they really do want to help people, even if they don't know them. So that's really awesome. So that's what I'm working on currently. Whether or not I'll have a poster at this year's AAS, I don't know. I've got a lot going on. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to get an abstract together. I know Doc Foreman wants to see me there. So I may try to get stuff pulled together.
Your poster was really good. You had a QR code. You lined it up with materials on your website. It was totally. It's like not only is the content good, but also you made your poster. I should just a plug for Darcy to anybody who's making decisions about AAS presentations. She fully thought through anybody who was coming, if they wanted to consume her poster, if they wanted to be able to capture the QR code, go to the website, see the supporting materials, tweet it out, email it to somebody, whatever. Her poster was like the research was solid, and then the consumability of the research was fully thought through, and way to go, boss. I'm gonna switch to Bart really quickly because Bart's been tweeting up a storm and has several comments. Go ahead, Bart.
Well, Darcy, the work that you're doing is, first of all, it's groundbreaking. Nobody else is really looking at this the way that you're looking at it, and so what an incredible thing that you're doing. Marshall, Marshman, who was on the chat with us tonight, he and I were talking about looking at a survey to find out how often college students are running into suicide content. How often does that happen? Nobody even knows how often this is happening. We've talked about that. And so I'm particularly interested. There's so many. The research you're doing is creating so many questions. Economists do a lot of research on how people interact with each other in a known, observed setting. So as you're talking about what people are doing in the research you're doing, I think that's really interesting. And I think we have bigger questions too about these folks know they're being observed. So there's a strong social desirability factor present in these behaviors, right? Having been involved in quite a few rescues on social media, I have seen so many posts that are completely ignored by lots of folks, and I know lots of folks are seeing those posts. So I'm really curious as to what happens in a real world setting where people don't think anybody is watching them, that they're going to know, somebody's going to know I've seen this post. So I think the fact that if you're in a controlled research setting where you know that somebody is watching you and they know what you're doing, you're going to get a very different response than people who are in their natural environment. And I think that the fear factor is a lot higher, and people are more likely to shy away. And also the bystander effect, somebody else will do something, right? Somebody else is going to do something. And I think you raised some really good points. I don't think Facebook has done some marketing on the report mechanism, but it's not an ongoing. This is one of those things with public safety, like with 911 and with emergency response. You've got to go do ongoing, constant updates. You've got to keep that information fresh. And I don't think that most people do. And having just made a recent Facebook report, it isn't very compelling the way that they do it. It doesn't really stand out to you that there's this special thing for people at risk of suicide, right? It's just in another standard menu of options of when you're reporting a concern. There's nothing that really pops out that, hey, this is really important, right? So I think you raised some really good points. And I think that the observation about people who have experienced attempts in their life, that they've had exposure to attempts being different from the group that have experienced deaths, that's really interesting. And I think that you're onto something there that's very, very compelling. This idea of efficacy in engagement is really key, and also how trauma can be involved, right? The trauma of a death may have a very different impact on that person, not only in efficacy, but in all kinds of other things. And here's what you see with suicide death. There's a tremendous amount of avoidance in the grief pattern. And so there could be very well be an avoidance pattern built around that as well that's really interesting. So there's so many interesting angles. And here you're like the one person that has all these amazing things going on. I mean, I think there's just a rich avenue of research. I think you've got an entire career in front of you on this, Darcy.
Thank you.
Darcy, we have one question for you before you respond to Bart. What is the gap that sometimes exists between wanting to help and actually helping? So, like, we have people who want to help and don't, and we have people who actually intervene. What do you think? Your thoughts? Can it be bridged?
Well, I think it's self-advocacy. I think that people who feel, and we see this in the peer intervention research, people who. So I'm going to go to the bullying research for just a minute, because it's what I've been most recently involved in. And that, what we've seen there is that people who bystand, either passively or actively, both have high levels of empathy for the victim. But what seems to be the distinction is that those who defend, who actively bystand, also have high levels of self-efficacy for doing that. So I think that could be the answer as to why some people want to help but then don't. They don't really know what to do. They don't really feel like they can do anything to help. There may be some moral disengagement as well. But
okay,
I largely think
for us dummies, moral disengagement. Discuss what that means.
So it's the idea that I don't have to do anything. I'm not really like obligated to do anything. I don't have like a responsibility. See, I'm not low in moral disengagement, or I am low in moral disengagement. I have to think about it.
I'm with you.
I basically feel obligated to do everything at all times, which is why I'm exhausted most of the time. I feel like I'm a good Southern lady. It's like, I can do it better than everybody else, honey. I'm going to do it. I just do it. You just go sit down, darling, while I make the tea and I do all the things. That's just sort of, that's just imagine me in the lab. That's sort of how I am. So, yeah, so I do think, though, that most people who want to help but don't do so because they don't feel like they can do anything, which I think is really sad, because the suicide prevention at its most basic form is just saying what's going on. Because once you ask someone that question, they know that somebody cares about them. And people who are going through suicide ideation feel like nobody cares. And they feel like there's no way that they can ever get better. And if you just say, how can I help you? And then follow through. That is one of my pet peeves, when people say they will help and then they don't. Like, but that, I think, it makes all the difference. And I think most people think that suicide prevention is this really daunting thing, like, and a lot of it goes back to all the stigma around suicide and how people who suicide are unpredictable and dangerous. They're not unpredictable, they're not dangerous. Like, suicide is an incredibly predictable thing. It's really not as scary as we think it is. It's completely effed up, but it's actually pretty simple when you like refine it down to what it is and like how to prevent it. It's incredibly like exquisite in a terrible way. It's sort of like Donald Trump. It's really not as substantive as we think it is. It's just a terrible like internal bully that really tells us we're worthless. But anyway.
So one of our former SPSM guests, who's a research librarian, was talking about how important it is to have somebody that she's lost someone who's transgender to suicide, and that considering the high attempt to mortality rate in the transgender community, she is really glad that there was someone like you who is doing this research that has both the lived experience and also the research chops. Just PF, just to let you know, because you're also an SPSM alum, we also have Dr. Ryan Latesta, who's a researcher on in that particular area, and then we've had folks from the Trans Lifeline here, and I know they're working on collecting data as well. One of the things that I think is really, really important to understand is that communities who are early, and Darcy, I hope you weigh your own thoughts on this, but communities who are early adopters of social media, who are also marginalized and at risk, they put together the pieces that this is possibly a way to save lives much faster than folks in mainstream suicide prevention. Darcy, any thoughts?
I mean, I definitely think that's true because trans people use social media a lot more than I think a lot of people do, because it's really the only place where we have the anonymity to be ourselves. And we can find an accepting community. And because our community is so, it's not, I mean, it's small, but it's really not. But it's small because so many people are afraid to be out. And especially in rural North Dakota, you may be the only out trans person, or you may think you're the only trans person in your town. Probably aren't. But, you know, there are towns with like 20 people in North Dakota. I mean, the biggest city in North Dakota is, you know, 105,000 people. I mean, it's, so the way that we're able to connect with one another, I mean, I'm friends with trans people all over the state, but the majority of my trans friends are not in Fargo. You know, they're all over the country. The way we're able to connect is through social media. And so we use social media so much, but I think we kind of understand it better. I'm engaged in social media, I would estimate about 5 hours a day. So I understand how social media works really well, probably better than a lot of people do because I use it so much. So I definitely agree. I think that is something that we see. And also, I think that the Native American community, which is another community that uses social media a lot, could really benefit from adopting some of the suicide prevention on social media because there's another community with such a high rate of suicidality.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that I was talking with somebody from Indian Health Services about that, and about them talking about, you know, often finding out about deaths, suicide deaths in the Native American and First Nation communities, because Facebook is sort of where that information, the clearinghouse for all that information, and there was sort of a way that it presents and a way that people access resources. So that I would love to do an SPSM on that, and I haven't found a good person to connect with to do that collaboration. So if you have any ideas.
I probably could connect. I've got, we actually have, I think, one of the few public health programs with an American Indian focus here at NDSU. So I can reach out to them because I've been wanting to do some research collaborations too. I wonder if the person you talked to at Indian Health Service is the same person I talked to. She actually came up to me at the conference in Chicago and was talking to me about my project and how it could be adapted.
Was it Pamela Endeflorn?
It was. Yay!
She's adorable. Anyway, I'm sorry. She's someone I get to email with quite a bit, but I got to finally meet her in person this year, and she's just super cool. But there were actually several folks, and I also learned a lot. I was on the planning committee for their suicide prevention symposium, and so I got to read a lot of research, and then I was like, oh, these are people I don't know that I want to know. But it's the same. I think you're onto something. Like that. There are people who understand this space very well because there are early adopters of the space by necessity. And these are the folks who should be working with researchers or be the researchers because they sort of natively understand like what's going on and how people might use it. And of course, when damn you data, you're not doing what I expected you to do, they may be more likely to have insight, like just a thought. You know, you might need to be a social media user to be a really good researcher. Just saying.
I think people can do good research not having lived an experience, but I think there's something to be said having the lived experience and having the experience with a very specific thing and doing really elegant research. I mean, Marsha Linehan, let's just take a minute. Marsha Linehan developed the best treatment for the disorder that she herself has dealt with her entire life. So I think there is something to say about that, this lived experience and how it can really make the difference between having good research and having elegant research that really encapsulates a lot of the intricacies, a lot of the intersections that most people may not realize exist. And this is why I like collaborating so much. Like if you look at my publications, they have a lot of people on them because I recognize my own limitations as a person. I've been accused at times of liking the sound of my own voice and of not liking to work with other people, but I do like the sound of my own voice.
I like the sound of your voice.
But I do like working with people because I think that when you collaborate, it's sort of like making an ice cream sundae. It's not just vanilla, you've got other things too. Everyone brings something different, and when they bring their little piece of different to the table, then we can make research that is even more beautiful because then we're taking into consideration different avenues. In fact, my advisor and I kind of went back and forth for a while on Friday about a project my thesis project actually, because I had said one thing, she's like, well, I don't think so. And I'm like, but I think so. And she was like, no, I don't think so. And finally I gave in and said, yeah, you're right. Not just because she's my advisor, but because she was right. And so.
So speaking of bringing toasted nuts to the table and Donald Trump, I know this is shocking, but Darcy, we are past 50 minutes into the program. And we're going to be rounding on final thoughts in just a couple of minutes. This is sort of our moment. Tony, do you want to weigh in on some of the ideas? This is sort of our last moment to ask questions.
It's way too much. It's much too much. The density of this and how compelling it is. You just have to visit Darcy's website. I already tweeted out the link to it. Astonishing work. We couldn't be more thrilled that people like Darcy exist to do this work. Such cool stuff. So no, I mean, whatever you want to talk about it.
You really should check
Darcy, last 5 minutes. Last 5 minutes of information. If you have 5 minutes to tell us more stuff. Okay.
You should check out my website. It is 80+ pages of painstakingly, well thought out. I mean, and I'm not just saying this because I wrote it, but I literally have spent a lot of time.
Because we asked you to be on here because it was good.
I'll say it for you. It is stunningly well done. It is one of the best researcher websites I think I've ever seen.
And I've
seen a lot.
This is the third version of it. I've worked so hard on it. And it's not just about my research, it's also about the transgender community. So if you want to know more, it's literally one of the best resources out there. I think it's a little known resource, but I literally looked at every transgender resource website and said, what's missing? And what was missing was every single resource in one place. So I have created every single resource in one place by linking to all these other websites. So it's really great. If you want to know more about the transgender community, you should go there. Point number 2. If you want to work with me, then you should ask, because I love to collaborate. I want to collaborate. I want to do this work. And so if you're interested, please reach out. The third thing is you should read my publication and cite me. Because I need.
And where are you being published? What journal is that again?
Suicide and Life-Threatening Behaviors, a publication of the American Association of Suicidology.
You could also be a member of the American Association of Suicidology by visiting suicidology.org.
The American Association of Suicidology, supporting this talk. Suicide prevention is everyone's business. Yo.
And I want, if you go to the website, just to be really clear, because I want you to understand why this is important. So when Darcy goes there, I mean, if you are a researcher, if you're a person with lived experience, if you're a person looking for resources, it's all sort of tied together so that you're seeing how the empiric literature ties to the good advice, ties to lived experience, ties to what you can do. And it really, and it's a beautifully designed, easy to navigate site. I wish more researchers would approach it like that. She spent a lot of time working on that, and she would message me, and I wish that, and I was feeling very honored because I thought it was already really good to begin with. And she was like, and I've thought about including this. And I thought, this is just thought through. please, researchers, consider chatting up Darcy about how to make your research websites this thought through. That's just my plug. Go ahead, Darcy. Sorry.
So I saw on Twitter someone wanted to know what the simulated Facebook newsfeed was.
Yes.
And there's not enough time, so there's no way to condense it into 5 minutes. So what I would,
Isn't that what you were talking about?
what?
Didn't you mention that, like when people were using the simulated task? Is that the one that we were talking about earlier?
It was, and I think the question was, I think someone wanted to know more about it. So that would be, again, if you want to like set up a live chat with me, we can, like, not SPSM, but anybody out there who wants to know more about it and maybe wants to use it, we can set up some kind of like screen chat thing where you can see what it looks like. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing for people to use it. It's entered its second version, so we've updated it to include like the reaction buttons, to include a feature where they can do a private message, because we found that a lot of people said that they would send private messages, but we didn't have that functionality, so we weren't able to see like what they would say in the private message. So that's something we've added for version 2. We've updated all the content to be more relevant. So just a shameless plug for that. But
so you made a simulated research task on your social media because you're like, this is a behavior that we can easily simulate, quantify, and measure.
Yes.
Holy fuck.
It's not
it's really smart.
It's very basic. It's very basic. It looks like Facebook.
If it were so basic, everyone would do it. Not that basic.
So you should definitely, like, if you want to know more about it, I'm definitely willing.
Darcy, we've hit final thoughts.
Okay.
So I'm gonna check in with Tony and Bart about that first, and I've got a super good final thought, and I'm pretty excited. But so Tony Wood, final thoughts.
I'm gobsmacked. The density here, it's mind-blowing material. I can't tell you how significant the Facebook simulation stuff is to me and to us and our interests. It's such cool stuff. Check out the website. I know not everybody has seen the website. Go take a look at the website. It's really good. Okay. Bart.
Good. I like that. Bart, final thoughts.
Yeah, go to Darcy's website. There's a beautiful link on there where Darcy tells her story, and you can actually listen to Darcy telling her story, and it's ever so powerful and beautiful. I want to give you mad props, Darcy, because one of the things that you're doing is you're empowering the people we need to be empowered, and you're treating this subject with self-agency, that in fact our youth and people in social media are capable and willing to engage, and it's this people as being experts model instead of the alleged experts as experts model. And I love you for that. We need more folks like you. And as a suicide attempt survivor and as somebody that it took so long to be open about my own life experiences, I am so proud of you, grateful to you, and just thank you for being on the show. It's been a real treat.
Darcy, final thoughts.
I thought you had a final. You don't have a final thought?
Oh, I went on saving mine. It's a good one. Go ahead.
My final thought is this. If you're out there and you feel like your life isn't worth living, you feel like nobody cares about you, that you can't be the person that you want to be, that your only option is to die alone, that I would challenge that and say that you are beautiful and valuable. You are the only person like you, and your loss would be a tragedy. And I know it seems hopeless, but you really can do everything that you want to do and be everything that you want to be. Just keep holding on and reach out for help, and don't be afraid to ask for it. Doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. Strong people know when they need help. And so I just encourage that. And, know that someone in North Dakota, in Fargo, North Dakota, is thinking about you every day when they get to work and thinking about you until they go home. That's my final thought.
No one can follow that. I've made a clear tactical error. Please do go to her website. But Darcy, it's actually a final request instead of a final thought.
Okay.
If you do some online collaborations, would you be interested in doing a live stream on YouTube where if you do a collaboration and share the ideas, would you be willing to sort of tape those and tweet those out with the SPSM hashtag, or post those on the SPSM page?
Definitely. And I try, every time I post anything about my research, I try to do the hashtag SPSM too. So definitely, though, I would be very more than happy to share that.
Yeah, we'll talk about getting you set up so that you can post officially on the SPSM page when you have resources and collaborations. Because I think that you should consider, especially since you're in North Dakota, a lot of these collaborations that you might do on video might be really cool. They might be really instructive, and you can do them live, record them, and share them. Because you're fun, and I dig it. I can't believe that was an hour.
I know.
Wow.
It seems like it's only 20 minutes.
I know. Everybody, it is 9 o'clock straight up. You still have 30 minutes left of the Trumpster Fire. You can go check it out. But let me tell you what, unlike the Trumpster Fire, this is something you're going to want to watch again tomorrow morning. Go ahead, share hashtag SPSM, share the video, look it over. This was really information dense. We couldn't get to all the research because Darcy's just done so much in a field that has so little. So give it a look. Thank you for joining us, Darcy. This is amazing. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.